When you think you've seen it all, JR. Oh, God. Bubble wrap.
WWE wrestlers who never lived up to the hype. Number 10. Nathan Jones. Nathan Jones was labeled in vignettes as an ex-prisoner who now made his way to WWE. Jones was expected to be a big-time player by those backstage in WWE, and these expectations were mainly down to Jones's look, as to his credit, he had an insanely impressive physique. WWE were so sure that Jones was going to be a big deal that he would be presented as The Undertaker's protege, and he'd be initially booked to team up with The Undertaker to take on the duo of A-Train and The Big Show at WrestleMania 19. However, this was changed at the last minute as they realized that Jones simply wasn't ready for a featured match. Following WrestleMania 19, Jones was sent to OVW for more training, and he would make his return to WWE television in the fall of 2003. Upon his return to television, WWE tried to present him as a heel, as they clearly believed that being an ex-prisoner was more of a villainous trait. Yet again, WWE gave him a notable push, and they even booked him to be part of Team Lesnar at the 2003 Survivor Series event. Jones would ultimately fail to make a connection with the crowd, as the Ruthless Aggression era audience just had nothing to gravitate towards, and it certainly didn't help that Jones couldn't remotely deliver in the squared circle whatsoever. The man was clearly as greener as Tajiri's green mist. Number 9. Mabel. In the summer of '95, WWE went all in on Mabel. Based on his booking and by the WWE commentary team telling the audience directly, it was presented as if Mabel was the next big threat in the WWE, and he was going to take the WWE by storm. WWE would continue this push for Mabel by booking him to win the illustrious King of the Ring tournament. This was an interesting decision from WWE's part, as Mabel wasn't popular with the fans, and nobody was crying out to see him being pushed into the main event scene. But they would commit to booking Mabel in the main event of the 1995 SummerSlam, and Mabel would face Diesel for the WWE title. The match was atrocious, and Mabel was reckless and negligent in the match, so much so that Vince McMahon almost fired him on the spot. The infamous match would bring Mabel's 1995 WWE push to an end, and Mabel was just another case of a wrestler not living up to the high standards created by WWE themselves. Number 8. Veer. Veer's WWE run became a running joke amongst fans, as WWE would air vignettes for his return to WWE programming for months on end, and when he eventually made his presence felt on the main roster, nobody cared. Vignettes can work extremely well in getting a wrestler over, yet WWE had to be careful not to overdo them, as it can sometimes look like WWE have no creative plans in place, and this was evidently the case with Veer. The main roster run was a total bust, as the crowd had zero interest in seeing him perform, and by April of 2024, Veer would be released from WWE, making the entire marketing push for his main roster arrival a complete waste of time. Number 7. Matt Morgan. Matt Morgan was yet another name that was pushed in WWE due to his size and stature. In 2003, Morgan debuted on SmackDown, and whilst he looked great, his in-ring work wasn't remotely at the level it needed to be, and he was exposed the moment he stepped foot in the ring. WWE would quite rightly send Morgan back to developmental, and when Morgan returned to screens in 2005, this run was arguably even more underwhelming, and Morgan would eventually be cut from his WWE contract. He would then soon find himself in TNA, and he managed to break out as a main event star during his run in the company, and working closely with legends such as Kurt Angle and Abyss made Morgan grow as a performer, and there were even rumors that Morgan was going to be in line for a world title run in 2011, which didn't exactly come as a surprise. Number 6. Gene Snitsky. The idea behind Gene Snitsky's persona was unique, and it was certainly a fresh way to introduce a new heel on TV. Snitsky made his official main roster debut on the September 13, 2004 edition of Raw. He would wrestle Kane, and by the end of the match, Snitsky would become one of the most detestable heels in the entire company. Snitsky would hit Kane in the back with a chair, resulting in Kane falling on a pregnant Lita. Snitsky would then become the new arch-rival for Kane, and whilst this was a strong debut, the subsequent weeks and months pushed his character into parody territory, as his segments became increasingly ridiculous and far-fetched. While Snitsky wasn't awful in the prominent role, he just didn't have the in-ring skills or the charisma to succeed at such a high level, and shortly after the Kane storyline was concluded, Snitsky would find himself in comedic roles, and he would become a regular on Sunday Night Heat. Number 5. Lacey Evans. And when a wrestler is called up from NXT, they must be able to handle the pressure of the main roster. The 2019 call-up of Lacey Evans led to a lot of confusion amongst fans, and despite Evans having a fun character and gimmick, her in-ring work never stood out, and it was speculated that she would struggle to get over with the main roster crowd. But WWE went the extra mile with Evans, as she would be featured on pay-per-views against Becky Lynch after WrestleMania 35, and although Lynch tried incredibly hard, the matches were passable at best and nobody was even taking Evans seriously as a legitimate contender. But WWE wouldn't give up, as although the fans hadn't connected with her, they would try her as a babyface and even attempt to repackage her an endless number of times. One time they even paired her with Ric Flair, and this was reportedly going to lead to a WrestleMania showdown with Charlotte Flair. WWE gave Evans opportunities left, right and center, and Evans was unfortunately unable to deliver to the standard that WWE or the audience expected. Number 4. Sin Cara. If WWE holds a press conference to announce a new signing, it's usually a sign that that wrestler is going to be set for greatness. In February 2011, WWE held a press conference in Mexico City to announce the signing of Sin Cara. WWE were of the belief that Sin Cara could be the next big babyface in the company, but they couldn't have been more wrong. Sin Cara had problems almost immediately in WWE, as he couldn't grasp the structure of a WWE match, which led to a lot of confusion in his matches. His matches were often filled with botches and blunders, and rather quickly, the audience who had never seen his prior work would collectively wonder what all the hype was about. WWE would pair Sin Cara in matches with talent such as Chavo Guerrero and even Daniel Bryan, but even these matches were poor. If a wrestler is unable to have a good match with Daniel Bryan, who is considered to be one of the most acclaimed wrestlers of all time, then there's definitely an issue. WWE persisted with Sin Cara's push, but the in-ring work didn't improve, and the crowd slowly but surely lost interest completely. By 2014, Sin Cara had parted ways with the company, but WWE were yet to give up on the Sin Cara persona that they created themselves, as they decided to give the character to Hunico. Number 3. Mordecai. The early vignettes of Mordecai were actually incredible. They presented this image of a wrestler that had a defined gimmick and could in theory be the new arch rival to The Undertaker. There was a ton of hype heading into the eventual debut of the character, but it could be argued that things went wrong the moment he made his first entrance. Mordecai would debut at the 2004 Judgment Day pay-per-view, and the initial presentation was hard to take seriously, as the gimmick and everything surrounding the character looked cheap and phony. The 3-minute match against Scotty 2 Hotty was also dreadful, and the crowd watched on in utter silence. WWE had grand plans for the character, and there were even rumors that a 1v1 matchup between Mordecai and the Deadman was on the horizon, but due to the poor reaction to the character, this was immediately scrapped, and the character was soon cancelled indefinitely. Number 2. Curtis Axel. Aligning a wrestler with Paul Heyman is usually a way to propel them instantly into the main event scene. In 2013, WWE paired Paul Heyman with Curtis Axel, and this was going to give Axel the push that fans had wanted to see for some time. But the pairing was awkward to watch, as there was a distinct lack of chemistry between the two. Heyman's most successful pairings, those being Brock Lesnar, CM Punk and Roman Reigns, benefited from the real-life friendship coming to the surface, but there was none of that present. According to Heyman during an interview with Rolling Stone, Heyman discussed that the bar was set too high with the prior pairings, and this was detrimental to the Axel and Heyman alliance getting over. I think the bar was set so high with the chemistry that Brock and I have, and the chemistry that CM Punk and I had, that it would be very difficult to match that. It's not just a situation of stick manager A with wrestler B, especially when you're shooting for the top. I never walked through the curtain with someone I wasn't trying to audition as a WrestleMania main eventer, and I never want to. And I'm sure the performers I've worked with didn't want to have an advocate whose goal was anything less, but sometimes the chemistry just isn't there. Although the WWE did admittedly try with Axel, by the end of 2013, the writing was on the wall, and it wasn't before long that Axel was moved down the card and the Heyman partnership would cease to exist. And number 1, Ted DiBiase Jr. When the Legacy faction disbanded officially in 2010, it was an expectation that Ted DiBiase would be the breakout star of the group. In reality, Cody Rhodes would take advantage of being booked in character-based roles, and these are roles that Cody excelled in. He was given numerous gimmicks, and he delivered the goods, and he managed to get organically over with the fans. Over a decade after the Legacy faction disbanded, Cody pretty much became the face of WWE, and he even main evented and won the WWE title in the main event of WrestleMania. But as for DiBiase, he struggled the moment that the Legacy faction was over. DiBiase, without Randy Orton and Rhodes by his side, quickly faded into the background. He didn't have the charisma or the natural talent to stand on his own, and he was quickly exposed in a singles role. WWE's attempt to push him were pointless, as the crowd had already decided that DiBiase wasn't going to be the star everyone predicted. Now, the interesting thing about him was that in 2009, WWE Magazine released a special issue focused on tomorrow's champions. The cover featured names that WWE would believe would be future world champions in the company. The cover featured DiBiase, Kofi Kingston, Rhodes, John Morrison, and Evan Bourne. When this was released, DiBiase was without a doubt the odds-on favorite to win a world title first, but this never occurred. and only Kingston and Rhodes will go on to reach the upper echelon of WWE. But there you have it folks, 10 WWE wrestlers who never lived up to the hype. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.